So let's start with what is your adversity? And this could be, there are many potentially that are on the go for you right now. Whatever you write there doesn't matter. But see, the beauty is in this model and your tasks. Your level of control that you have is very low with adversity.
Right.
It's very high with your tasks. And it's mediocre with your obstacles. Okay? But I'm going to say more positive control than negative control.
Okay.
This flows upwards. So your tasks, as I mentioned earlier, if you have too many of them, they're not done efficiently or not done well, then they create obstacles. Too many obstacles create adversity. This also comes down. So for example, when I had my surgeries, I was told to go on disability and I had neuropathic pain. To me, that was an adversity, which then created new obstacles. Every obstacle, once we figure out solution, creates additional tasks. So first thing we do, we write down our adversity. Okay, so COVID-19, and from there, what gets so crystal clear about what that does to you. For me, that meant that my absolute best quarter in 14 years of business just blew up by Friday night at 10 o'clock of last.
Right.
Because I go to companies and I speak. I had training contracts 3 months in a row to help management teams figure out how to be resilient. Now, hopefully, okay, so that's number one. So cash flow. I think the one thing on people's mind is cash flow. This is trouble.
Very much.
Okay. So now we go, what are the obstacles? Oh, sorry. Look at me even going ahead of my own stuff, because that is the adversity. The obstacle is cash flow.
Yeah.
And see, an obstacle, remember, is a log in our path. If we treat an obstacle as if it's an adversity, we don't have hope. We can't turn a log into a sinkhole.
Right.
So I'm asking you on a pen and paper to separate the two. Here's an adversity. What am I feeling? My number one priority here is healing. As the kids might say, feel the feels.
Yeah.
Feel the feels.
Like
the
that.
Fear, the anger, the uncertainty, the shaking of the ground. You know, the challenge with those tough emotions is that we as leaders often bury them by working harder.
Yes.
And the work harder is not there right now and actually will be a problem if you're trying to be a workaholic right now. Okay. So that's feeling. We have to separate these. Here, our number one priority is getting solution focused. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, how we get solution focused. And tasks, when we go here, so the cash flow issue is, let's say if you're in Canada and you're blessed to be here, I think, you know, there are a lot of programs. We don't necessarily know how we're going to get the money, but for businesses, they're promising help. So your task for that is, can I research granting options?
Right.
Can I put a stop payment or make arrangements and deferrals on some of my bills or things that are available? Can I cancel payments? I mean, we hate to do that to the economy, but how do I tighten my own belt? Okay. So do you see how this works, this format? If we're only focusing up here, mind is mush,
Right.
overwhelmed, we can't do anything. I want you to sit down and pull this into as deep and granular a level, because each one of these you can go, this is number one, this is number two, this is number three, or whatever order you want to put them in.
Yep.
And in the time when you're able to focus, and I find that when you accept and are okay that this needs to happen and stop beating yourself up about it,
Right.
you're going to free up a little bit more bandwidth to get A, B, C, D done.
So let me ask you, I love the model because there's a quote from a statistician who was a 20th century very well known in the mathematics world. His name was George E.P. Box, and he said all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I'm looking for
Well, you know, I just made this one up, so he may be very right.
And, well, because I tell clients all the time, I'm going to show you models, and to tell you the truth, you can find reasons why it won't work, but it's all based on us. In other words, if we're prepared to go through this is a great model, but it really does require us to take the time. So let's say there's a leadership team, 3-4 people, small company,
yeah.
And they all start this process, but they start to they have their own personal obstacles. And how do we, and earlier you did mention, I totally understand it. Normally, under normal circumstances, a couple of people anywhere in a team might be having problems, and we have all these other resources to help us, including each other. What is it like right now when we're all going through it? So is there ways we lean on each other differently, even with this model? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, everything is a bit different for sure. I mean, I think everything's a lot different because the people who are the stalwarts who you're looking towards, even if they're showing up, what I'm seeing is a lot of reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so people are taking ownership when they're not ready to take ownership. Right? Like, so, you know, even like the moms, right? There's a lot of mom talk right now. And, you know, they're trying to do everything for their family, right? And dads too, by the way. I mean, like if this is your personality, and actually, I want to share with you 2 more models that I think are going to help you. Please. And then we'll come back to specifically answer this question.
Great.
Those obstacles, I want you to think of them as an ice cube. Okay? So we've got these little ice cubes. Now, what happens in our regular life is we make these ice cubes snowman bottoms. We pack snow around them, maybe up in the top of a hill, and we turn them into a snowball first with misplaced emotion. This is going to be important, so I'm going to do it slowly. Negative storyline.
Right.
And bad habits.
Right.
And actually that seems judgmental, so I'd actually now call it a barrier to performance. And these would be worry, complaining, judging. Right. Okay? That's the snow. So if you have a team and you've identified, here's our obstacles, all the obstacles we're facing. I want you to take them down to the absolute most granular level that you can. Because cash flow is maybe too overwhelming. Well, it is overwhelming. Let's be honest, right? That's a regular emotion, but it doesn't actually require emotion. We need to deal with it.
Right.
And challenge each other, because the reason the adversity is the fear, right?
Right.
And we can't add and allow, and this is the emotional intelligence, and why I wish desperately people would have done this work 3 years ago. You know, but we can't go back. We've got to figure it out today.
Sure.
You have to separate fear from the ice cubes.
Right.
Because
so there's room to talk about it, but we have to, by talking about it, we're still back to, we have an obstacle, guys, and each one of us is going to be reminding the other one about what those obstacles are. So even if I'm getting a little worrisome, Pascal is there with me to say, Rob, I respect it and I understand it, but we have to go and focus back over here.
Validate and focus. Validate and focus. Yes, this is scary. Yes, it's easy to get worried, but let's trust ourselves that we're going to find a way to figure this out. If we can isolate and we can stay safe from catching the actual virus, then we're going to get through this.
Right.
And it may be, or actually it's not even it may, it won't be pretty.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to offer ourselves self-forgiveness and know that not every day are we going to be able to be in a power play position.
I really appreciate this model. I do want to say for our listeners, there's no doubt that Allison is Canadian. She has chosen a snowman. So it's a very Canadian model. I like that, Allison.
I suppose it could be, something else. Well, and the thing is that it's really easy to melt an ice cube, but if you only watch a W Network movie once in a while, you can't ever get rid of those snowmen, right? They'll stay through the spring.
So I have two questions. These are wonderful. And they have to do with things you've already mentioned. So the first one is around basically adversity and personal and with the team. So as a leader, how do you, I'm trying to choose the word carefully, influence or help people face adversity and acknowledge it? Because right now we have a spectrum of people. Some are facing it or are living the adversity and letting themselves feel those feelings, and others are totally blocking them out. And that could be on your team. So how do you lead an exercise like this on your team if you have some that don't that choose to totally ignore it and then creates conflict within the team?
Okay, so great insight. Let me just show you this, because the answer is not the same for every person.
Okay.
That's the challenge. So not only do you have to process your own emotions, tap into and understand how are you physically reacting and how do you put yourself in the best position? What storyline are you sharing? And what then your emotions follow after that. Okay. So let's look at so there's you, and I think we should even go that far into my resilience formula, but let's just hang on for a second. There's you, and then there's your team. So let's look at the different ways people will respond. The first is the victim. Now, a victim is their problems equals their identity. These are the people who it's all about them, and it's harder for them to see the rest of the world kind of going through this. Now, I'm going to actually read my notes on this, which is the same as what I do when I'm on stage, because I want to be sure to give you this model so you understand. So the victims are the ones who will complain more than they do. So for these people, when you're thinking about from a leadership perspective in this tough time, we need to put a cap on the complaining, because they will bring people into the vortex of just sort of suck the life out of, or any hope out of a situation. And I think we all go into this a little bit, especially when we're facing an adversity. It's very natural, and we can't stay there long. That's the key. We got to pull them out of it. And so this is where it takes, if I go back to the last model, like on the last page about the negative storyline, is as a leader, challenge the words you're using and the words your team is using to describe a situation. For example, if it's a regular day and somebody goes, "Oh my God, there's a disaster, it's a disaster," and they're in the other room, and you as an empathetic being are like, "Oh my gosh, is there an earthquake coming? Is there a new question, is there a pandemic coming? Is there, did somebody get hurt? Is the ambulance on the way?" This is the brain's interpretation of the word disaster. And you rush out, and somebody's like, "Oh, well, I spilled coffee on my shirt." The stress response is the same. So we want to look with our victims, we need to plug the rabbit hole so that we don't go into that vortex, right? Of desperation and all of that. Validate and shift the focus. Okay, I understand, and then call it out for what it really is. Listen, I understand things are scary right now. Let's focus right now on what we can do. Another option is to allow a time frame to just go into the weeds. Like, you need to have a safe place to vent. Now, you want to vent up, not down, if it's you as the leader, but your team, you need to give them, listen, I understand, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and I want you to say absolutely every desperate, devastating thing that you can think of with this situation. And
Right.
just let it out. Because complaining, when it gets looped on a reel, or we don't allow the depth of the truth to come from it, that complaining will actually make a problem much, much, much worse. But venting should actually make us feel a little bit better. And it's a nuance between the two. So I actually believe, and I've got some friends, I've got my safe circle, and it's like, I just need a big cry. Give me 5 minutes to not interrupt me and not correct my language, and let me just feel like the world is collapsing. Okay, and this is why it's so important to have our network, our shared advisors. I mean, the people in your group are so fortunate to have you, right? Like, they need that opportunity, that place where they can be safe. But we can't allow them to stay there for too long. Okay, time limit, and then change the story. So the next piece here, I probably don't need to be doing this, is on a thing. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to stop the share, and I can just talk, because you don't need to see the words. There are enough words there to matter. So the next one is the number outer. A word that's easier is maybe the avoider. And I got to tell you, this is my natural set point. This is me. This is how I cope with everything, unless I interrupt the pattern. So the avoider is the person who 3.5 weeks ago would have been showed up sick the day that you were going to do a review.
Right.
Okay? They'll say things like, oh, it is what it is, and like move on. They'll avoid the conflict if they can.
Right.
And it's like, you know, if you owe the tax man money, you're just not going to open up the envelope because maybe the bill's going to go away. Right? That's the avoider. That's the number outer. And I know this one, as I mentioned, it's my natural set point. It's how I would respond if I don't choose to be resilient. And the way to push this one and to inspire them is to really focus on what's like small wins. Let them get lost in a project, because this group will step up if they have something of meaning to do. So, for example, listen, can you do me a favor? Can you go and research every option we have available to us for funding? They'll kick into gear. So think about small little steps that can get them focused on the tasks. Now, the reactor is the third way. And by the way, there are a lot more complicated models around this framework, and I just like to make it really, really simple for people so that they can, you know, go do the 12 different things. But right now, we just got to give you something to get it done. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the reactor is the person who, again, 3.5 weeks ago, would have used busy as their badge of honor. Mm-hmm. Constantly reacting to external forces. And I think this is where a lot of professionals live. And I think the biggest risk right now for this professional is that they don't have that external stimulation to get lost in. There are the people when, you know, the validation comes from being busy and being needed. They're probably sometimes the people who would complain about being busy, but they're the one who said yes to everything in the first place.
Right.
Right. And so the risk here is that they're going to be so spinning in so many directions and reacting to the news every day that they may not ever get anything done, or they're really going to struggle through this process emotionally because they're not going to deal with anything emotional. They're not going to feel the feels. Totally going to use that now. I think it's ridiculous, but I will. My poor mom will be like, grammatically, Allison, that is not correct. That's okay. So this reactive person is like almost, I think, going to be the most profoundly changed when we come out the other side of this. I'm actually most excited for this person, because this is going to force them to go in, to not deflect, right? To not react, but to sit and go, okay, the path I'm on. And, you know, when we think about the tasks, the obstacles, and the adversity, we got to get clear about what kind of a path do we want to create on the other side.